People experiencing homelessness have become a political target these days, just as Denver sends out teams of civilians to find people living on the streets and give them citations. Investigators consider a weapons charge over the state legislator who didn't have gun control at the state capitol. She offers advice about Russia to presidents. She'll tell us whether Colorado is still the nuclear target it was during the Cold War. Looking at what the end of changing clocks would mean for daylight in Colorado. And there are two ways to learn how to steer clear of moose. One hurts more than the other. All that is next. Denver is sending civilians out to ticket people for being homeless. So what do you think? Is that a smart way to conserve police resources at a time when crime is rising? Or is it creepy dystopian vigilantism preying on the vulnerable? Here's Mark Salinger.
The city of Denver has tried to reduce homeless encampments for years. Now it's stepping up enforcement of the urban camping ban with a new street enforcement team. Civilians patrolling the streets armed with the power to issue citations for ordinance violations.
The problem of unsheltered homelessness and encampments has been something that our community has raised a lot of concerns.
Armando Saldate is the new executive director of the Denver Department of Public Safety. For months now, he's been hiring and overseeing the new team. They'll begin writing citations in the coming weeks, or as soon as their uniforms come in. The team was supposed to launch last year.
Our team's fitted. We're just waiting on those uniforms to arrive.
Saldate says this isn't supposed to be a team of citizen vigilantes writing tickets to people who can't afford to live anywhere else. He says the citations won't come with monetary fines, but instead they'll have to appear in Denver's homeless outreach court and could be sentenced to jail or community service. The team will work to connect people with housing and other services.
They need to understand it's a violation of the law, and the mechanism for that violation is a citation.
Denver has tried alternative responses to nonviolent, low-level police calls before, with efforts like the Star Van. The Star Van sends mental health professionals and paramedics to people in crisis. Saldate says the street enforcement team has trained with the Star team and others to learn about behavioral health.
Bringing people to court who have done nothing other than try to survive on our street is not the way to solve these issues.
Homeless advocates have spoken out against the team writing tickets, including Vinny Cervantes with the Denver Alliance for Street Health Response. He's working on launching an app where people can upload their interactions with the street enforcement team and keep track of where they are.
It furthers the practice of criminalizing people who have nowhere else to go.
Now, the street enforcement team will not be tasked with physically sweeping any of the camps, nor will they be the ones who are posting the signs that say this camp will be swept in the coming days as is required by law. The city of Denver wants to make sure that police officers are the ones doing that because they're wearing body-worn cameras and they want to make sure that everything's recorded if anybody goes and does something wrong, or everybody is held accountable as well. Kyle?
That accountability, Mark, I think people know who you complain to if you think that a police officer has done wrong. What happens if it's a civilian that somebody has complained about?
Yeah, if a police officer does something wrong, you can go to the Citizen Oversight Board or the city's independent police monitor. For civilians, like we're talking about here with the street enforcement team, the complaints would go directly to the Department of Public Safety, and from there, the director of the Department of Public Safety can pass it along to someone like the Citizen Oversight Board.
Mark Salinger reporting. Thank you, Mark. Denver police and the Colorado State Patrol are looking at potential criminal charges for the Republican state legislator who lost control of his firearm at the state capitol today. Fellow Republican says Representative Richard Holtorf of Akron tripped, fell, handgun went flying. Now, us everyday folks cannot carry a gun at the Capitol. That's not allowed. State legislators have long been able to, based on a law that allows Coloradans to carry at their workplace. So it's kind of curious that investigators would openly say that they're considering charges against a sitting state representative. DPD said that the possible charge relates to unlawful possession of a concealed weapon. Colorado's best-known Republican is a step closer to a formal primary challenge. Congresswoman Lauren Boebert's only prominent challenger turned in his petition signatures today. If the Secretary of State's office deems enough of those signatures valid, then State Senator Don Coram would be on the primary ballot. That's one of two ways you can get on a ballot in Colorado. The other way is to go through the assembly process, where party insiders vote, and any candidate who gets 30% of the vote makes the ballot. That was a picture of the State House. I'm not really sure why we showed you that. My apologies. Given Boebert's overwhelming popularity with the GOP base, it might have been difficult for any challenger to crack that 30% at the Assembly. Unaffiliated voters can vote in the Republican primary, and protecting Boebert from an unaffiliated wave is a stated reason why some far-right Republicans have decided to sue to block unaffiliateds from participating in the primary. Well, if you needed another reason to root against nuclear war, Colorado's long been thought to be one of the first targets should, God forbid, missiles fly. There are a number of military facilities, but specifically, they're the nuclear weapons silos underground in northern Colorado and neighboring states. They're designed to draw fire from nuclear-armed enemies in order to spare American cities elsewhere. Marshall Zellinger had the chance to talk to somebody who knows Vladimir Putin and Russia well, talk about how much of the nuclear threat to Colorado is a relic of the Cold War and how much is a real concern. Dr. Fiona Hill is a Russia expert who's worked for 3 presidents, and she's in town speaking at a few colleges.
One of the things that is notable about Putin, and remember, he's been in office now for 22 years.
Dr. Fiona Hill knows Russia better than most. She was President Trump's former advisor on Russia. She's met Vladimir Putin. And as she visits metro area colleges, like this morning at the University of Denver, she opines about the Russian president.
The only person who made this decision to invade Ukraine is Putin. He didn't have to do this. It's purely a war of choice, his choice. It's not even the Russian people.
Hill said we are already in World War III, which means I need to tell you about the nuclear sponge, a cute name with a terrifying assumption. Check out this map provided by the National Park Service. The red shaded areas still have buried nuclear missiles, like around Warren Air Force Base at the Colorado-Wyoming border. During the Cold War, these locations were the shortest distance to strike the Soviet Union, and the missiles were away from populated cities in case the Soviet Union wanted to strike first, which would likely involve first destroying these sites to take away our counterattack.
Are we in Colorado the first attack if there's a nuclear war?
Well, it depends on what the nature of that is. And unfortunately, during the Cold War, yes, that was the case back in the period in which there was a standoff between the United States and the Soviet Union. I mean, there are many places like Colorado with Air Force bases, with nuclear missiles, with radar stations, which you have, here just outside of Denver. The point of contemplating this and thinking about it is not for people to feel scared and intimidated, but is to inspect what's happening here, to understand why Putin is doing this. I mean, basically, this is a sign of weakness. He wants to have us engage with him and actually to, in a way, negotiate away Ukraine.
International politics and nuclear war, not what I went to school for. But I had a fascinating conversation with Dr. Hill, including the idea that the systemic destruction of a country or a people seems to be okay in the world when the person doing it has nuclear weapons at their disposal. She told me that if Putin didn't have nuclear weapons, maybe there'd be more pushback from the rest of the world. But because you have nuclear weapons, you have to take a different stance and let it go for a while, apparently.
Yeah, genocide is what the dictionary calls that when you try to wipe out a people based on who they are. It is interesting, though, to hear that, like, the Cold War lessons that folks' parents here in Colorado were told, might not apply. The old, don't worry about ducking and covering because you're glass.
Yeah, we've heard this from Lawrence, from our director Lawrence, who said in school, it's like, he lived near Nebraska, where it's like, we don't even learn that, because if something's going to happen, you don't have to duck and cover. You're not going to have to worry about anything. And that's an awful thing to think about.
Yeah, and disturbing to think about somebody operating from both a point of weakness, as Dr. Hill says Putin is, but also nuclear arms. Marshall, thank you. The world clearly wants to help Ukraine right now. Having the ability to help, though, takes real connections and infrastructure during wartime. I want to tell you about Project Cure, based in Colorado. They're shipping medical supplies and equipment all around the world. They've worked in 138 different countries, including a long time in Ukraine. Today, they started collecting a big donation from UC Health. Things like bandages and tourniquets and surgical gowns, the types of medical supplies needed to help the wounded in war. The organization shipped supplies from a warehouse in Chicago in the past week. And sure enough, they've got photos. Those medical supplies made it all the way to a hospital in Ukraine.
Well, when you see the things actually arrive, it's a mixed feeling. You're so excited, and you're just so driven to do more. I lay awake in bed at night just thinking, man, if we could just get one more airplane out, if we could just get one more cargo container out, that's that many more people that we could help.
Project Cure has 3 more airlifts to Ukraine scheduled this week. They're also hoping to send a cargo container via ship soon.
It's about time.
Literally, daylight saving time, the push to make it permanent across the country and here in Colorado. And as COVID-19 numbers come down, Colorado's health department is done with the free tests and the community vaccine sites. Their plan for the future, next. Daylight saving time could sunset before long. U.S. Senate unanimously passed a bill today that would make the time change permanent. And on Friday, Colorado's legislators introduced a bill in the House here that would also make daylight saving the new standard. That decision would hinge on federal law. Democratic Senator Jeff Bridges is a sponsor of that State House bill. He tells us that just like the federal bill, the one before our state legislature is bipartisan. It would appear that sunlight brings people together.
This is not a Democrat or Republican issue. And in fact, part of what I love about this, and part of why I was hoping a little bit for the referred measure for something on the ballot, is to see people fight with each other fiercely over something that has nothing to do with partisan politics. There's something enjoyable about it. There's something good, actually, for the spirit of politics in America, for something like that to happen.
Have the chance to argue about something that's not inherently political. You mentioned Senator Bridges there mentioned the referred measure. He's also offering a bill that would allow Coloradans to vote on whether to make standard time permanent. Standard or daylight saving. He says he doesn't think people have a preference one way or another, but he does believe that people just hate switching their clocks twice a year.
And polling shows people agree. They don't want to change their clocks. And maybe we try both, and then we decide, you know what, forget this. Let's go back to changing our clocks. And then 50 years later, people go, you know what, I hate this changing the clock thing. Let's go back to daylight year round. Oh, no, let's go to standard year round. Yeah. All I know is that the people that I talk with, the people I represent, the energy in this building and in my community and in Colorado is to end the madness, is to stop changing clocks twice a year. And we'll see what happens from there.
Dude is super jazzed about this. So Colorado tried permanent daylight saving time in the 70s. Got a ton of complaints, mostly from parents who worried about kids being hit by cars in the dark in the morning going to school. Teacher in Golden wrote a letter to the editor of the Golden Transcript in 1974 asking if the clock change was worth the danger. From Jeffco to Vail, districts adjusted their school hours because of the clock change. Teachers reported that teenagers were quieter in the morning, but the elementary school kids were too tired to learn. And in Steamboat, business owners told the paper that the time change didn't seem to help their business any. President Ford ended permanent daylight saving time in 1974. The switch to permanent daylight saving would make our mornings in Colorado look like this. Sun wouldn't rise until after 8 a.m. from late November to early February. Sunrise after 8 a.m. The earliest sunset of the year would come in early December at 5:35 p.m., so no more 4:30 sunsets. And adios seasonal depression.
Glorious day in Colorado. Highs here in Denver in the upper 60s, low 70s. But you know the drill. It's March. Rain and snow on the way tomorrow. Here comes our next winter storm, making a line drive into Colorado by tomorrow afternoon. I anticipate seeing those rain showers probably about 3, 4 o'clock. But really, the party gets started up in the mountains early on your Wednesday morning. By about 2, 3 o'clock, here comes the rain around Fort Collins to Greeley and then filters in around Denver by 7. Late tomorrow night, it switches over to snow, and that really is when we'll have most of the accumulation. Highs in the 50s, but will quickly cool off. Here in the city, about 2 to 5 inches with 5 to 10 to the west and to the south. It sticks around Thursday, but hey, look at the weekend. It will be beautiful once again.
Something about big animals makes people foolish. It's not how you Colorado. Like recently in Grand Lake, where people were getting close enough to feed a female moose and her calf on the Grand Avenue boardwalk. They were up there petting an abandoned calf as well. That poor little one was way too comfortable around people, so CPW chose to relocate her. Hopefully she stays away, comes back. That's bad news. That really endangers an animal. Getting close to the mama moose is a fantastic way to end up as an ornament. Speaking of doing dumb in public, there's a warning out today that people should not be kayaking at Chatfield Reservoir because it's still covered in ice. CPW is reminding people it's not boating season no matter what the temperature is, so long as there's ice on the reservoir. So not even kayaks and paddle boards, not even in the gravel ponds out there, they're asking. They do not want to have to fish people out of the drink and from under the ice. The state of Colorado is doing away with free rapid COVID-19 tests and community vaccine sites. What the future of COVID prevention is expected to look like here. Next. Oh, that was kind of snazzy there. I like that. This is the last day to get rapid COVID-19 tests from the state of Colorado. They're going to shut the program down at midnight. When Colorado's rapid at-home testing program launched in September 2021, it was the first program of its kind in the nation. Just write in, get tests shipped to you. The state says it sent out more than 2.5 million rapid tests to Coloradans. After midnight, if you go to the state site, you're going to be automatically redirected to the federal test giveaway program. You just go directly, covidtests.gov. Colorado's health department is also phasing out its community vaccine sites. They told our Byron Reed it's part of the process of learning to live with COVID.
There's about 16 locations that we will begin to phase out over the course of the next several weeks. My name is Scott Bookman. I serve as the state of Colorado's COVID-19 incident commander. So we really are at a transition point in our response to the pandemic. We see high levels of immunity across our state at this point. We see cases and hospitalizations dropping rapidly. And we're also seeing the demand at these larger kind of fixed community vaccination sites waning significantly. We will be keeping our buses to do mobile work. We do still have a number of our vaccine support teams. We need to go meet people where they are. Those community vaccination sites are a tool, but people have to come to that. And so really when we start looking at our future here and making sure that we're continuing our efforts to serve those who have not been vaccinated yet, this is a great way to do it. We are hoping that any day now we will hear approval for vaccine for the youngest in our country, and so 6 months to 4-year-olds. And so, again, those are our efforts that will be focused mainly in a pediatrician's office. We really want to start normalizing COVID within our traditional medical system. And so this is one step forward in doing that. This is going to be a gradual process here where we're constantly evaluating what the need is. We've just seen the demand at all of these sites drop off so dramatically. It's really just not an efficient way to do this work at this point.
The state says the mobile vaccine clinics will continue their operations through at least June 30th. It's a sign that grammar is the difference between nature and something wilder. That and your feedback next. It's a sign that there's something wild going on nearby. I don't think that it's warning of wildlife in Steamboat Springs, because there's a space in there, like if it was moose and elk. It indicates that the hazard ahead is wildlife. A lot of fun. Dan spotted that sign, shared it with the rest of the class. Be like Dan. Enjoy the wildlife and send photos to next@9news.com or post them with the hashtag #HeyNext. Karen writes in with feedback tonight saying, how are the homeless folks in Denver supposed to pay these citations that they get? This is Mark Salinger's story about the civilian task force on the street giving people citations for being homeless. I have absolutely no idea, Karen. Your guess is as good as mine. Christine says, why would state lawmakers be exempt from the idea that you cannot carry a weapon inside the state capitol? The deal is they can pretty much exempt themselves from anything that they want. My understanding is that while there's a ban on civilians carrying inside the Capitol, there's also a Colorado law that allows people to carry in their workplace, and the state legislators who run the state have decided that that applies to them. And Terry says, why'd you dye your hair? You look like Hugh Hefner. I don't know what to make of that. We'll be right back. No, next time. Never mind, next time.